I went to school in the country, to a country school, and we were bused in every morning and every night. So, and that was at that time the only high school around, unless you were sent away to boarding school or something. There was an epidemic of polio had been going around, and a new vaccine had been discovered by Dr. Salk. And all the students in the school were to line up in the gym, and we were all supposed to get these polio shots. And dutifully, away we went, all of us. And when it came my turn, there I was. Nurse shoved the needle in my arm, and the needle broke. And there was vaccine all over the place. She was covered with it. It was all over her lovely white coat, and it was running down her glasses, and I'm still standing there. But I looked back, the football team was behind me, and about 3/4 of them were on their face on the floor. A trip that we made to the World Music Festival in Chicago, and we were invited to play there as this renowned Canadian band, and they thought we were quite unique because all the American bands, if there were girls in it, they all wore pants and slacks, and they thought we were beautiful in our red jackets, and the men in their white pants, and the ladies in white pleated skirts. So they thought that was quite unique. We had a wonderful time. We played there, big long concert, and we went by train down to Chicago, and we were coming home by train. And we got partway back, just about to Grand Bend, Indiana, when there was problems with the train, and the train was derailed, and we had 2 cars between with the band, and in between those 2 cars, that's where it decided to break apart. And fortunately, some of the band members had just gone through on their way to the dining car and had gotten through before that broke. But we were really lucky that there was about 20 cars off, and had our cars tipped the other way, we would have gone down a 50-foot embankment. The cars rattled and rolled, and our instruments were all in the head up above us, just like on the buses or the trains. And the doors flew open and the instruments flew out, and mine was damaged. A lot of them weren't, they were okay. And so we kind of picked up our instruments and what we could gather, and they got us off the train. They sent an engine and a caboose out to pick us up. And all of the band were around the engine or in the caboose or whatever. And when we got into Grand Bend, Indiana, the WA decided that we were all a bit shaken and that we should do something to relax ourselves. And in his mind, music was the only thing that did that. And so he had everybody who still had a workable instrument get them out, and we sat down in the middle of the train station and played a concert. And everybody in the concert, in the station, thought that this was absolutely wonderful. And although he was a bit upset, they started throwing money in somebody's musical case, and he said, no, that's not why we're doing this, you know. So he was upset about that. But anyway, we all arrived home safely, and our parents were there very thankfully to pick us up because they'd heard this all on the news. My favorite concert was during Hurricane Hazel. The school put on a fundraising concert in the old auditorium, not the W.A. Fisher, to raise money for those people affected by Hurricane Hazel. They were renowned. Everybody knew who the Barrie Collegiate Band was. So the band gave me an exposure to a lot of different cultures and people from those cultures.
I was captain of the junior football team and the junior rugby team. And honestly, one of my favorite moments is just being out on the field with my friends and having everyone there supporting us. We are always supportive, no matter what. We'll even have different people coming out, helping different teams. Different generations always come back. Like some of the really amazing rugby players that have moved on to university, they come back and they help us, and it's so good to see that. There's been generations of people coming to this school, and every single person that I've met that's come to the school have been such positive people. So I think Central should be remembered as just a positive school.
A lot of generations here, just with our family, that have come to this. My father came, and he would be 100 years old now, so he came to this school. And I used to come to Prince of Wales School, so I lived on Parkside Drive, and naturally the shortcut to Prince of Wales was to come through the very Collegiate Institute property. So we used to come through the side of the high school over to Prince of Wales School. And then someday when my dreams are realized, I will be going to that school. The fastest 4 years of my life was when I came to this school. It just goes so quickly, too quickly.
I was on the Barrie Central Band Committee for about 10 years, and our six children all were in the band. And my husband Bob and I, we were on the chaperonage for the 1974 band trip to Europe.
I know this school means a lot to me because even my parents went. They were 1940s when they came here, and all my other siblings came through this school too, and there were 6 of us in the family. So it means a lot, this school. Just made good friends.
Lots of friends.
Good friends and lasting friendship.
Forever. Funny. The cafeteria was funny. So you would always wonder what someone else had brought to lunch and what was someone getting on their lunch tray. And I remember laughing a lot at cafeteria.
Well, Christmas concerts and Christmas assemblies are definitely probably the biggest memory I had, even as a staff member, but they were huge, lots of fun. I remember one year when I was in grade 11, when we had a snow day on the last day before Christmas holidays, which is generally when nobody comes, and that year everybody came just to see the Christmas assemblies. That's how good they were.
Essential for me was, I was a big part of all the sports organization. As everybody knows, rugby was the big sport back when I was here in high school, so there's a lot of great memories playing some sports here. We had a long legacy of some championship games. I know we were 12 times attending OFSA, winning the medal. And I think when I was here, I won a gold and a bronze. I got married this past summer, and a lot of the guys that I went to high school with were actually in my wedding party, so it's just kind of created lifelong memories for me.
And I know you're afraid of falling flat. And I know those walls are up against your back. And I know there are those who see a crack. Yeah, but I know that you're stronger than that.
I was taking piano lessons, and then my uncle gave me a guitar, so I started learning guitar. And then once I got to high school, I found some other friends that were like-minded and played guitar as well. And then I found a friend who had a drum set, and then his mother let us jam in his basement. So my very first show I ever played in my life was I was on that stage. And so those are definitely some of my fondest memories, because I'm still doing it to this day. I cut my teeth learning how to play rock and roll on that stage, even though it was only a couple assemblies a year that we get to play up there. So for me to be able to play on the same stage that my very first performance of all time was on, and to be able to be a part of the last show, one of the last shows that would ever be on, that to me, I was sold. That was pretty special.
If you can hear me, then rain on me. Give me one reason to believe. That's what I thought. I'm standing here without a drop.
It was probably a buyout, I think. I was in grade 9, still hadn't really played on that stage yet, or had my band yet. And this band came and they played, there's a band called Rage Against the Machine. And these bands came in and they played some Rage Against the Machine songs. And it was loud, really loud. But all we had at the time, we didn't have these nice speakers here. It was just a really crappy PA system. So that you couldn't hear a lick of what the singer was singing. And he was up there screaming his face off, and you couldn't hear a word. But I was just, the amplifiers were blowing my face, and my face was being melted, and it probably, it was probably a life-changing moment for me just to sit there and be like, oh, that's what I want to do, man. Yeah. When I was in the thick of it, I don't know, I was just kind of a punk kid, and I couldn't wait to get out. And only now as I look back to it, I realize how cool of a school it was and how lucky we were to have this right here. Just incredible. So this alone, I don't think any other high school in Barrie's ever had anything close to this. So this alone would be really sad to lose.
I think the first time I sang was in grade 10, and then now that I'm in grade 12, like all the musicians at Central have gotten together and created like a little band collective thing that we all jam out at Library Unplugged and at Coffee House and stuff, and it's like so much fun. Because of the size of the school, it's a very small group of people that have like grown together throughout all of high school, and like now that I'm in grade 12, like it's like a little family, I guess.
Well, I lived in Alcona Beach, and there was just a 2-room schoolhouse, and transportation wasn't available like it was now, so you had the same bus driver all the time. His name was Frenchie, and you got to meet a lot of kids from Stroud and in the area that you hadn't met before, and it was a huge school to come to from a 2-room schoolhouse. The teachers had an impact on your life, some of them, in how they taught you and how they treated you. Enid Copeland was one of the teachers who I knew personally from, she owned a horse ranch down where we lived, and she found me my first job in Toronto. When I was in grade 11, Miss Thompson was our French teacher. I'm not sure the group, but there was the opportunity to do a French school exchange. And in those days it was in Quebec, not in France. And I was able to be matched up with someone that lived outside of a city, the same as I did here, who came from a large family. I was a family of 10, she was a family of 8. And I became fairly fluent in French, and we've maintained that friendship now. I hope to go down and see her probably in the next couple of months. She lives in Montreal, she's retired. But it's been a lifelong friendship, a wonderful one.
One of the things that I remembered was that Mr. Ron Mossop happened to be the appointed principal in place of Mr. Bowman. He hadn't been actually, I guess, sworn in or whatever goes on, but he was our mentor for that grade 13 year. And part of his mentorship was that he brought in the first non-compulsory attendance for classes. So that was quite extraordinary. And as the grade 13 class in 1969, he felt that it was a responsibility that we needed to learn and take responsibility for our own actions, and that we deserved the respect, and to realize that would foster our own independence and spirit.
A lot of the students who lived out in Oro Township and Vesper Township and then also Essa and Innisfil Township, their mom and dad made arrangements for them to get them into school every day, or a lot of them came to school and boarded in Barrie and then went back home on the weekends. I spent maybe more time on extracurricular than I did on studies, but I played on the football team, of course, and I played on the basketball team. I was on the track and field team, and I was on rifle team, and I was also in the Army Cadets at the school, which, of course, every school in those days had their Army Cadets. It wasn't like a warish and anything like that. It was just sort of a meeting of the brotherhood. I'll say we had platoons, and a graduation at the Barrie Armories every year that used to have 2,000 people go to it like that, where we paraded, and the gals paraded, and then also the Barrie Collegiate Band, they also played. So it was a very important, it was a very important, fun part of our school life. It was an absolutely outstanding 5 years of my life. I met all kinds of buddies and friends that I still have today. We met lots of people on the football field and on the hockey arena, and also on the basketball court and track and field. We still run into some people the odd time from Orillia, Midland, like that, and say, I remember you went to BCI, and I remember you went to Collingwood Collegiate or something like that.
In the hall?
Met in the hall.
Met in the hall. And I came from Timmins, so I didn't know a lot of Barrie people. So I met Jack.
When I was going into grade 12, I went to school the first day and I saw this beautiful young lady with long blonde hair in braids. And of course, all we fellows said, oh, hello, who's that? We, of course, introduced ourselves to her, and that developed with Joan and I into a relationship whereby we eventually became husband and wife and had 2 young guys. And when we went to school, there was no fooling around in school. When we went to school, in all due respect, and it's part because we're all a big family, like bullying was unheard of. I had a locker to keep my coat and everything and my school books in. I had a locker to keep my gym equipment in 2 different lockers. Nobody ever had a padlock on them. And in fact, I had a guy, he came to me one day and he said, Jack, he said, I haven't got any money for gym shorts or running shoes or t-shirts. Can I borrow yours? And I said, sure. So he dig into my locker and he'd get my shorts and t-shirts. And one thing about them too is like the t-shirt and shorts came to school on September the 2nd and they went home on June the 30th. I think of all the names of the teachers I had, and people said, well, like, you must have been afraid of them. And I said, no, we weren't. We had the deepest respect for them.
We met so many wonderful different, boys and girls, different personalities, and you just learn. You probably had some special ones that were closer to you, but you just learned how to get along with every person that you met.
My biggest lesson, life lesson from high school, I think, is that there are some great people out there. I go back through my memory now and think of some of the guys and the gals that I knew through high school. And as we go older, we begin to realize how much of friends they were. We had a gang that we used to start when we would walk to school. We lived at the corner of Ross and Parkside Drive, and we'd start for school around 8:15. By the time we got down to the foot of Parkside Drive to BCI, there'd be 20 people in the gang.
I think when we look back on our time at Central, there's always one teacher that really played a significant and influential role in our lives. And in the case of my own life, actually helped create the path that I followed once I left school. That teacher was Mary Wace. She was my class music teacher and took me in music right through grade 13. She was the choir conductor, and I sang in many different choirs of hers and or played as the piano accompanist. She was the music director for numerous different stage productions that I was involved in. She was also my Latin teacher for a year and a homeroom teacher. She was significant in instilling in me a love of classical music and an appreciation for the creative endeavors of the various great composers of all time whose music we listened to. Once I left Barrie Central, I then went to university and I got my degree in music education. And my professional life, in a way, has actually very much followed what Mary's was. I became a school music specialist teacher, and I've conducted many different choirs myself and still continue to. There's no question that my love of music and my ability, I suppose, to actually make music with other people probably has been the most significant influence that I've actually taken from the school. The musical highlight was the Brigadoon production that took place in about the mid-60s. It was so much fun being part of a big stage musical production. I didn't play a major role. I was part of the chorus, but I didn't feel that I was any less important than any one of the principals in it. It was a lot of fun, and the memories stay with me. We had a family member, our dad, who was a teacher and then vice principal here at the school. For us, I think Central was as much a family as a place to come and learn. There were all sorts of occasions when staff would get together with us as kids, and so we grew up just being part of a central family of teachers and students.
6 of the best years of my life. I had a grand time, which was probably one of the reasons my parents wanted me to move on. They could see no end in sight. The library itself was in one of those rooms with the huge window pane windows that you see in the old pictures of Central. And on a nice day, it was like sitting in a solarium. And Harry Bingham, he ran the library with an iron fist, and I'll get back to that in a minute. And he also taught English literature. And he had the ability to bring literature to life. I got to look at going to English class like I looked at going to the movies. It was just something I came to delight in, and it's left me with a lifetime passion for reading and novels and just about anything. Anyway, Harry was a bit of a character. He was a big man, probably the size of me now, a little pear-shaped, but a big man. And he grew all sorts, I guess because of the available sunlight in his library, he grew all sorts of plants. I seem to recall things like African violets and stuff like that. And as he kind of floated around the room teaching us, because it doubled as library and English class, we sat at library tables, 4, 5, 6 of us, and I guess 30 or so in a class. And Harry would be kind of floating around, talking, teaching, picking dead leaves off his plants, and this kind of thing. Now, if you ever messed with Harry's plants, I suspect you would have ended up in a shallow grave, like he was very possessive about them. But one of the fun things I remembered about Harry, just because I thought it was the smart thing to do, I used to slip down to the Queen's Hotel the odd time at noon hour and have a beer, notwithstanding my relative lack of age. And one day I'm in there sipping a beer and believe it or not, reading the Globe and Mail. I quite like the Globe and Mail and still do. And I see out of the corner of my eye this movement, and I look, and it's Harry Bingham, my English guy, sipping a beer and waving me over. And I thought, oh, my life is over. This is it. So I go over and we finish our beer and have a nice chat. Harry looks at his watch and says, well, it's time for us supposed to go back to work. He said, and you've got English right after lunch. You missed my class. I will make the rest of your year a living hell. I was only too willing to take Harry's word for it because I'd dealt with him before. There were several funny moments with Harry Bingham because he had this habit of, not with the young ladies as he called them, but with the young gentlemen, me being one of them arguably, where if you were talking when you should have been listening, Harry would somehow, and I don't know quite how he did it, the mechanics of it, but he would flick you on the ear with his index knuckle and you thought you were going to faint. It just, I don't know how he did it, but Harry did that to me routinely. And for sins alleged and true. What a lot of people didn't realize about Mr. Fisher was he also taught history. And he was unique in my limited experience at that time in that he didn't care what date something happened. It couldn't matter less to him. Columbus discovered it in 1492. He could have easily done it 10 years earlier, 10 years later. Mr. Fisher didn't care. What he did care about was if you could, I'll use an example, the origins of World War I. If you could show that it probably just as easily could have started 20 years before it did, or in fact should never have started at all, even though you were rewriting history, if your arguments were logical, you got top marks. And so he didn't teach memory work, he taught thinking. He taught you how to think. And again, I developed an interest in history that stays with me to this day. Football, loved it. Played football all the years I was here. Thought it was incredible. If truth be known, the only reason I came back for my final year was I was still young enough to play football. So that sort of tells you where my priorities were, and they weren't academic at that point in time. We always used to be beaten up by North Collegiate for some reason, and one year we beat them, our senior football team, rather convincingly. So that kind of stays with me. We lost 5 or 6 in a row and then beat them once, but at least we got one game. Several of my aunts, my dad, my daughter, myself, went to school here. When I went to university, I found it, I'm not saying easy, but relatively easy because of what I was taught here at Barrie Central by these two guys I just mentioned to you.
Well, I was in the band and the music programs, and I was privileged to be part of the Euro Tour, the 1970 Euro Tour. We played in Kerkrade, in Holland, and touring the Canadian War cemeteries in Europe, which was a very moving experience. And thinking back, though, I remember specifically our trips to the Kiwanis Music Festival in Toronto with the band. And we did very, very well. We were the class act. We were the group to beat there year after year. I think that both W.A. Fisher and Mary Wace, being my music teachers, helped me develop a love of music from different points of view. W.A. was the first teacher who really ever pushed us, I think, as students, who really demanded excellence. And Mary, who developed that love of music, of lifelong learning of music. I worked on the technical aspects of our plays here, along with performing. I remember being in South Pacific. That was tons of fun as one of the chorus members. And, but I also did a lot of the lighting work for some of the larger shows that came in from Toronto, for groups like the National Ballet or the Fou Follet, the Elmer Eisler Singers when they performed here. I remember getting Elmer Eisler to stand in a position on stage for me so I could get the lights correct on that particular section. He was very accommodating. Band practice with W.A. was at once both terrifying and often very, very funny. And one of the things that we'd always remember about W.A. was his great quotes while he was lecturing us on one thing or another. And at one point he stops us in mid-phrase and he yells out to the clarinets, "Oh, you clarinets don't have enough rhythm to have children." The Camera Club, loved the Camera Club. We had our own room. It was a little lab off one of the science rooms, and we'd process a lot of the photos there that went into the yearbooks. I think that Central, as a school, as an institution, should be remembered as a place that encouraged excellence, that encouraged students to step beyond mediocrity, step beyond just passing, step beyond just looking for good enough, and looking for the way to be the best that one could be.